My name is Kristen McMahon, and I have the privilege of serving as the president of the Robert H. Jackson Center. And each year we look forward to welcoming all of you for the International Humanitarian Law Roundtable. I deeply enjoy these opportunities to speak with you and learn with you. And I was telling someone earlier today, my very first one of these in 2019, I walked into this grand room with all of you. And I thought, what am I doing here? I don't know anything about this. I am a dilettante. And I have learned year over year so much from you all. And so I deeply appreciate that. This evening would not be possible without the generous support of Joshua and Janice Heintz and all of you for making this journey this year to be with us this weekend. I have the distinct honor to introduce the recipient of this year's Joshua Heintz Award for Humanitarian Achievement, which honors those who demonstrate compassion, vision, and dedication in pursuit of international humanitarian justice. But first, I would like to ask the benefactor, Mr. Joshua Heintz, to come to the podium to share his thoughts.
I don't know when we started exactly, but the award always stimulates a lot of things. I go back to David Crane inviting me to the first humanitarian law dialogues that I attended. I don't know the year, but Whitney Harris, Ben Ferenz, Bill Kaming were there, and I spent some time talking to each one. And I was completely overwhelmed by the fact that, first of all, they had been so successful prosecuting these terrible individuals. And secondarily, nobody ever said thank you to them. You know, this is God's work that they were doing. So I spoke to David, and the Heintz Award evolved. I'd also like to comment tonight, seeing all the prosecutors and listening to the various perspectives was really, I think there's one word that comes to mind. It was transformative, because if you look at 80 years from Nuremberg to today, none of these things existed until Nuremberg held somebody accountable, Hitler and his cronies. And then came David Crane with the United Nations and Sierra Leone, and here we are today. So each one of these milestones, I think, comes from a group of change agents, transformers, et cetera. So thank you for the opportunity to do my little part to say thank you, and with that, we'll welcome the recipient.
Josh has also given me a great opportunity to share with you all a new exhibit that will be downstairs in the banquet room when you join us next year, and I'm already planning on that. And it is called Jackson's Legacy of Justice, 80 Years Since Nuremberg. And it will take us through Nuremberg, through the ad hoc tribunals, through the Rome Statute and the ICC, and come around to, and to be honest, I keep joking about this, although joke is probably not the quite the right word. When I started thinking of this 3 years ago, I thought, okay, Russian Federation invasion of Ukraine, we'll understand what the justice mechanism is for that and how to move forward. And then we had the Israel and Hamas conflict. And so it may end with a lot of question marks, which I also don't think is inappropriate. I think there's a lot of uncertainty as to where we're going and how we are continuing to hold people accountable in this space. But I look forward to you all joining us next year and seeing that on the walls in the banquet room downstairs. So this year's recipient of the Heintz Award for Humanitarian Achievement is James A. Goldston. Mr. Goldston is the executive director of the Open Society Justice Initiative, which advances the rule of law and rights protection worldwide through advocacy, litigation, research, and the promotion of legal capacity. He has served in this role for more than 20 years. A leading practitioner of international human rights and criminal law, Goldston has litigated several groundbreaking cases before the European Court of Human Rights and United Nations treaty bodies, including on issues of counterterrorism, racial discrimination, and torture. From 2007 to 2008, Goldston served as a coordinator of prosecutions and senior trial attorney in the Office of the Prosecutor at the International Criminal Court. He also served as the legal director of the Budapest-based European Roma Rights Center for 3 years, Director General of Human Rights of the Mission to Bosnia-Herzegovina of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, prosecutor in the Office of the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, where he focused on organized crime, and an attorney for Human Rights Watch. Goldston has written widely in scholarly and popular publications about human rights, strategic litigation, and international justice. He has taught at Columbia Law School, NYU Law School, and Central European University, and he is a graduate of Columbia College and Harvard Law School. Reaching back more than a decade to a paper Jim delivered before the American Bar Association, I found these words which I think speak to this gathering as we look at the relevancy and challenge for international criminal justice in the coming decades. On the one hand, the rule of law offers a conceptual framework and a range of tools and constituencies that together can help translate rights discourse into concrete results. For example, a core rule of law principle that the judgments of duly constituted judicial bodies be respected and followed can help address a principal weakness of the contemporary international human rights system. The dismal record of state implementation of and compliance with the judgments of regional human rights tribunals, the views of UN treaty bodies, and the orders of international criminal courts. At the same time, the rule of law can enhance human development by incorporating rights consciousness and principles of accountability into development projects in fields from health to education to the environment. End quote. And while I am, at times, frustrated by our seeming inability to deeply internalize the lessons of history, to avoid repeating our mistakes and our challenges, I do find deep inspiration in gatherings such as this and in knowing just how many people are working on trying to change them. Jim could not be with us this weekend, so he recorded some thoughts that he wanted to share.
Greetings. I'm grateful to the Robert Jackson Center and to the International Humanitarian Law Roundtable, and I'm deeply humbled by the honor you have bestowed upon me. As a founding father of the field of international justice, Robert Jackson is an icon in whose path we all follow. I've benefited from being able to join on occasion in the camaraderie and sharing of insights at the Roundtable, and I'm most grateful to David Crane and the many friends and colleagues who have enriched its discussions. I'm sorry that I am unable to be with you this year, but I hope very much to join again in the future. When I was told that I would be receiving the Heintz Award for Humanitarian Achievement, I initially thought that there must be some mistake. Didn't you mean the other Goldston, the far more famous and accomplished one, with an E at the end of his name? But I realized, no, he received this award last year. And then I saw the names of other honorees, including Sergei Magnitsky, whose family I had the privilege of representing successfully at the European Court of Human Rights in suing Russia for his torture and untimely death, and Brenda Hollis, who has been a mentor and advisor to me and my colleagues for many years. And so I came to appreciate that this award is given not just to me, but to the extraordinary team at Open Society and our many partners and collaborators around the world who have so courageously and persistently struggled for justice against great odds. And it is in that spirit of shared struggle that I speak to you today. For most of its life, the architecture of international justice, the rules, norms, and institutions that have guided efforts to hold accountable perpetrators of the most serious crimes was built upon the presumption that things were getting better. The world was progressing towards increased respect for democracy and human rights. Progress was not linear. Indeed, there were steps sideways and backward. But from Nuremberg through the adoption of the International Criminal Court's governing Rome Statute, the general trajectory was in the direction of accountability. With all their flaws, some of the oldest democracies in the world, many of them responsible, to be sure, for colonial and other crimes, were nonetheless among the prime movers for justice in the former Yugoslavia, in Rwanda, in Sierra Leone, and in Ukraine. But times have changed. In recent years, authoritarian leaders bearing attitudes hostile to human rights have been on the rise. As a result, the United States, whose leadership in the cause of accountability has been as essential as it has been inconsistent, has gone so far as to impose sanctions this year on the ICC's prosecutor and 4 of its judges. We at the Open Society Justice Initiative successfully challenged the first set of U.S. sanctions in 2020, and we're doing so again. But the United States is not alone in weakening its democracy as it undermines its commitment to international justice. According to media reports, even before the events of October 7, 2023, Democratic Israel's foreign intelligence chief allegedly threatened the former prosecutor of the ICC to halt her investigation of events in Palestine. In 2019, following its autocratic turn, the Philippines withdrew from the ICC. And earlier this year, proudly illiberal Hungary announced its intention to do so, shortly after it refused to execute an ICC arrest warrant. It is not that international justice was always a project of democracies. After all, the leaders of 2 of Nuremberg's prosecuting nations were Chiang Kai-shek and Joseph Stalin. Rather, as Robert Jackson observed in his opening statement, Nuremberg was undertaken in the hope that, quote, juridical action will put the forces of international law on the side of peace. Today, the Rome Statute, which brings together governments of all political stripes, similarly recognizes that, quote, grave crimes threaten the peace, security, and well-being of the world. So democracy was never an explicit condition of international justice. But the global turn toward authoritarianism makes the world a less welcoming place for survivors of war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, and aggression, and for independent judges and lawyers of all kinds. When elected heads of state seek to expand their power beyond traditional bounds, when authorities remove and criminally charge the leadership of bar associations, when judges in national courts are threatened for doing their jobs in checking executive overreach, the rule of law suffers for victims of ordinary and extraordinary crimes. Increasingly, the question is not only whether prosecutions and trials will be compromised by double standards, though that remains a concern. Today, many are rightly worried whether the project of holding senior perpetrators to account will survive at all. But experience suggests that progress is contagious. Advancing the rule of law anywhere makes the rule of law culture more possible everywhere. And amidst the dangers and disappointments, I find hope in the many expressions of courage, resistance, and, yes, faith in the ability to use law to push back against arrogations of power. I see hope in judges who in recent years have, not without risk, defended the integrity of democratic elections in Senegal, in India, and in other places. I see hope in courts in the United States that have rejected unlawful attempts to punish law firms and university students for who they represent or what they say. I see hope in an international court of justice that has had the fortitude to shine a global spotlight on grave crimes in Myanmar, Syria, and Israel and Gaza. And I see hope in a string of rulings over the past year by international courts, the ICJ, the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, and the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, that have made clear that states have legal obligations to address the growing scourge of climate change. Finally, I see hope in an ever more vibrant, and determined community of scholars, activists, and once and future legal and judicial officers committed to preserve and expand the reach and potential of international justice. Thank you to all for continuing your work and offering your inspiration. And thank you to Kristen, and of course to Josh and Janice Heintz for your generosity.
And Josh, could I ask you to come forward to accept the award on Jim's behalf?